All right. I sent a welcoming chat. I'm waiting for people to show up. Woohoo! See what we end up talking about today. Hi, Digital. How you doing? RT says hi. Hi to you as well. A couple of new people. I don't remember seeing your names before. Your hair is beautiful. Thank you very much. I really like this color. It's one of those things. I appreciate it. It was one of those, let's see, Dan says, hello everyone. Hi, Dan. Dora Mifra says, hello, hello. How are you guys doing this week? I've had a bit of an interesting week myself this week. It's been a little bit different. Started off at the beginning of the week, I think on Monday night, I had what I could only describe as 3 gnomes standing next to the side of my bed looking at me. And it's always so interesting to me when that happens, because it's kind of like looking at the most intricately drawn line drawing I've ever seen, with all of their features and everything. Hi, Teresa. Hi, Emily. Happy Sunday. Yes. And they were all very distinctive. They looked different from one another, so they weren't like the same individual multiplied or something. And apparently they wanted to know if I could see their faces. So I said, yes, I can see your face. I asked them what their names were, and they didn't respond to that, so they were off. I was like, okay, don't know what that was about. Hi, Midnight. And then on the 5th of March, I guess, I ended up waking up to a bunch of Kundalini energetic stuff running through my body. Kept me awake for about an hour, I think, as it was doing its thing and pulsing up through my crown chakra eventually, so I could get back to sleep. Hi, Athusa. I think, oh, hello, Midnight. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. I'm always surprised by some of that stuff. So how have you guys been doing? We had rain last night. It was keeping me awake. It was quite loud. It cleared up this morning, thank goodness, but we had quite the little downpour that is hard for me to sleep through downpours, especially when the wind gets howling. Made me think about weather and the video I just did on the air and that kind of thing. Ryder is here. Hi, Ryder. Hello, everyone else. Yes. So someone sent me in a request to talk about shape shifting and in my mind also glamour, doing a glamour and overshadowing kind of stuff. So I thought it'd be a good opening to start talking about that, because in the pagan community there's certainly a lot of talk about the idea of changing your shape, and some of the ancient myths and stories about people who turn into other animals and that kind of thing. And I've not seen that in particular personally, but my husband and I both witnessed an actual shape shifting that we can't explain in broad daylight from our car as we were driving down the road. And that was sort of a surprise. I know I've mentioned this before, but it was like there was an old man with wild gray hair riding a bicycle, and he was on our side of the road heading towards us. So I was a little bit nervous as I was driving, because I'm cautious around bicycles because I've taken so many bicycle falls myself. So I was really paying attention to this individual, and just as the rider got about 15, 20 feet from the vehicle, it suddenly was a younger, black-haired woman with a completely different shaped face smoking, which the man with the gray hair was not doing, and very focused. I mean, she had a big round head. He had an oval shaped head. I mean, if you put them side by side, there was no way that you would think they were the same person. It's not possible. And then drove by. And Ian popped up. He said, well, that was weird. And I says, yeah, because I thought that was an old man with a big beard, and it turned into this younger woman with black hair. That was kind of strange. So the fact that both of us saw it simultaneously lent more stability to the experience, sort of verifying it with each other in the moment. And that's often one of the criteria that I use to try and decide whether something I saw actually happened or not, or if it was, because sometimes I see things from the past, or maybe even some things from the future. And having someone who's seeing the same thing helps to kind of validate the experience. But the idea of a glamour, Gnomes is here, says, hello, I just gave myself long black claws and like the aesthetic, but can't do much with it. Okay. Writer says, that is strange. Always good when more than one sees it too. Yeah. And then we met someone here in town who saw the same transformation from the opposite side. And she was at the university, our local college here. And she saw the black-haired woman who was smoking turn into the gray-haired man with the long beard, and then he winked at her and then walked away. And so that was kind of interesting to meet someone else who saw exactly the same thing. So my theory is that there is a spirit being of some kind that can take on what appears to be solid form in our area, but I haven't been able to locate any kind of local mythology about it. Our Native American mythology in this area is very slim to none. There's not much available, and it's difficult to find the information in order to put it into context. So it's just like a one-off. It hasn't happened again. Yeah, but there it was. So it seems to me that it's theoretically possible, if it was a true shapeshift, or if it was a glamour, which would be being able to put on a different aspect on yourself. Not sure exactly if a glamour is what happens to me.
A glamour is it? Sorry.
Not sure if a glamour is what happens to me when I'm channeling and doing a Moida session where my face changes and other people see my face as completely different than what it is. Sounds like the kind of stuff Loki would do.
I would say glamour is usually not a transformation, but a disguise, more or less. But there can be other things that apply that to, like get a certain radiance from doing particular magical operations and things.
I'm not sure if people can hear you from over there on the other side of the room.
Sorry.
That's okay. I mean, I like the fact that you want to jump in, but you need to be closer today.
And I'm all snuffly.
And you're all snuffly, yeah. Desideradum says, I'm curious about these cryptid things called wraiths or rakes. They're milky white humanoid things with black eyes, and they crawl on all fours. I wonder if they are incomplete shapeshifters, maybe? I have absolutely no idea. I haven't run into one of those in person yet, so I don't have any first-hand knowledge of that particular thing. Gnomes is here, says, my mother has hazel eyes but can change them from brown to hazel to blue. I've had that happen to me. I have hazel eyes as well. And actually green is one of the colors that my eyes tends to shift into from time to time. Concrete Angel says, I know someone who was chased by a skinwalker. That sounds like it could be dangerous and scary. Gnomes is here, says, I have golden hazel but can make mine brown, green, or coppery red. Oh, so Concrete Angel says that they could hear you fine, so I'm sorry, dear. So if you want to jump in, you were speaking loud enough for them to hear you. Yeah, he's got like some nasally stuff going on today, so. But yeah, when I'm when I would be channeling, when I did my Moida sessions, people would see my body and my face change completely, and mostly people would see the same image. So it wasn't like each person saw something different, they all saw the same thing. And I know that for myself, as an empath, in my younger days in particular, I would often change how I looked without realizing I was doing that. I would try to adapt to an image that someone had in their head, and I would try to become what that was, and sometimes even changed the shape of my body and that kind of thing. And I don't know, again, if that was me projecting that into their mind so that they would see what they were looking for, or whether I actually was transforming. And I know that when you do the mirror gazing exercise, you're looking at yourself and you see your face change and so forth, I think that's not physically changing, but what you're seeing are different people you might have been in a past life, or something like that. It can be very disconcerting to see that. So yeah, it's kind of a large subject when it comes to it. Desert Rodham says, please don't run into one of those things. I would assume skinwalkers. I don't want to run into a skinwalker, or is that the wraiths or rakes? I don't want to run into one of those things either, whatever they are. Got to be cautious. So when we have like an unusual and hard to explain experience, we try to look for explanations to fit on top of whatever happened, to try and like put it in a place and have it make sense to us, so that we feel comfortable about it. Yeah, Gnomes is here, says, I was chased by some large spirit dog in a park at night, but it turned around and started running in circles around me, brushing against me, making my dress move. Two other girls behind me watched it all. Well, that would be a pretty powerful spirit if it was moving your clothes and other people could see it. So it must have been something that was there, that existed there in local. We know that some ghosts can certainly, and spirit beings can move objects and that kind of thing. So that's certainly not beyond the realm of possibility, but it would be kind of scary and startling to have happen, especially at night. You're running. Ryder says, always thought wraith was the Scottish word for ghost. I think that it probably, I think often people use the word wraith as the same thing as like an invisible or see-through figure of some kind, which could be a ghost, but could also be a spirit of some kind that's not human. I think ghost is sort of more precise to the human being remnants that are out there, that have some relationship to having been a person, and wraith might be more of a umbrella term for anything that is kind of like, wispy and see-through and is out there, but I don't know. I'm not Scottish. Gnomes is here, says, can spirits pop in, visit, and leave like they're drawn to a person due to their energy? Well, spirits are certainly attracted to people for various reasons. Earthbound spirits are often attracted to the living because they're trying to recapture their life, the memories, and that kind of thing. And I've seen this in person, like in a bar kind of a thing. When people become inebriated, it makes them more vulnerable to having an earthbound spirit attach and follow them home. It doesn't mean that they stay with them later, but that's certainly one of the ways that you can end up picking up that kind of an energy. And your energy in and of itself is a beacon in the spirit world, as far as what kind of energy you put off is going to attract certain types of spirits to you, along with belief systems and a number of other things as well, and how you decide you're going to interpret what happens. So That made sense to Ryder, my explanation about race. Lauren says, hi, Siofra, Ian, everyone. Hi, Laura. Ryder says, hi, Laura. Hi, Ryder. Guys are, I love how the community is communicating with each other. I think it's great. Oh, and I started a project this week. I started doing a beading of Bridget. This is my project at the moment. And I'm going to wait until I can see it because it's always a little bit behind me. Yeah, I've got her red hair done. The color isn't exact with the camera, but that's what I started this week, and I'm pretty excited about that. And I was surprised to discover there's a snake in her hair, and then there's this bird in the piece. So I had to actually do some research and figure out what the bird was. And it turns out it's an oyster catcher. And so now I'm going to adapt the colors that I use for that bird so that it matches. They have like an orange or red bill and then brown, black, and white feathers. So thank you. Glad you like it. I'm enjoying it. It's kind of fun to find a little project to do. Laurel says, the last house I lived in had a ghost that was headless. Well, the headless horseman kind of thing, huh? I don't think I've ever met a ghost that was headless. Do you know if someone, like, lost their head in your house in the past? Or is this perhaps an attempt on the side of a spirit to try and disconcert the living? Because they can make themselves appear any way they want. That's always a possibility. Interesting. We had a ghost in one house I lived in up in Saskatchewan that played the drums. Better than the person whose drums they were. That was entertaining. So certainly, I think when they've done surveys on how many people believe in ghosts, that it's actually a lot. A lot of people have had some kind of encounter with the other side, either when somebody has just recently died and come to visit them, or as they're getting ready to die and they see the relatives that have passed over on the other side, they're coming to comfort them and help them, or moving into a house that seems to have a haunting. Okay, so Laura says that she heard somebody was murdered there, but don't know if that's true or not. So Marisol says, hi, Siofra, I wanted to ask you how the she looked like that you talked about on your latest video. The she, when I see them, yes, thank you, Laura. I appreciate that you liked my picture. They have long white hair. That's kind of and they're my size, our size. They're human sized or taller. The male she I've seen is definitely, taller than me. Of course, I'm short, so almost everyone is taller than me except for children. But hey, and they have what we think of as elf ears, I guess. They have pointed ears. And I'm pretty sure at this point that I must have met one of them when I was a child, because I remember trying to paint a picture of this woman that I saw that had long white hair and had like violet colored eyes. And it never looked right. I kept trying I didn't know how to paint. Not that great at drawing, and that is not my medium. So Teresa says, Siofra, I have connected with deity. Every time now that I sit at my altar for devotions, I get dizzy. I'm holding black quartz to ground, but do you have any other suggestions? Well, the whole point of connecting with a deity is to experience a change in consciousness when you're trying to tune into and communicate with them. So being dizzy is normal. I'm not sure if you're trying to not be dizzy, but I would just go with it, and then you can ground when you're done, afterwards. And it's a way you're slowly adapting to the energy of whatever god or goddess form you're interacting with. So Disladrodum says over 70% of Americans believe in ghosts, with about 8 to 10% being undecided. Yeah, that's a significant amount. and I've certainly met plenty of people that have had experiences. Laura says, I'm 5'1". Good things come in small packages, right? I'm taller than you by 2 inches. Yep, it's the short ones that get things done, right? Gnomes is here, says, I have a small girl in my house. She pops up randomly and sits or dances around. And a dark-haired, smirking spirit in a dark dress or cloak with a huge snow-white skinned face. What is the pale one? The one with the huge snow-white skinned face? I don't know. What kind of energy do you get off of them? Have you tried asking? Yeah, you with just a description, it's not necessarily easy for me to tell from a distance, because there can be other things that look like that. Teresa says, I didn't know it was the norm. I'll make sure I ground after, thanks. I get dizzy every time I go to bed now at night because, I'm going to be laying down. I circle, and they know it. So I just sort of lay there because I know I'm not going to fall down because I'm laying down, so that's good. And let it happen. Desideradum says, I've read about the Fae being masters of glamour magic. Well, I think that's certainly a possibility, but I don't think it happens the way it does in the movies, like in, what's the name of that one? Remember the name of that one? You guys probably will come up with the name of the one where they changed their hair color and they changed their eye color, and the craft, that's what they called it. Yeah. It's one of the things that's confusing. But I think in an emergency situation, at least for myself, I can change how I look to someone because I need to. And I think a lot of what I do and what happens to me happens because of that exact thing. It's like something that I need to know how to do right now because something needs to be done, and then all of a sudden it's like, bam, there it is, and I have it. So the craft. Yes, it was the craft. Gnomes is here, says, uncomfortable and mischievous, but not bad or negative. It just stares until I leave the room. Have you tried asking it what it needs and why it's there? Or asking its name? And asking it what it is? You might get some information. You could be surprised. Be prepared to set up, boundaries if things get out of whack. That's one of the things I actually wanted to address today, because when some kind of a spirit manifestation takes place in an environment, depending on the people that are there and how they respond to it, can really change the nature of the experience. So if it is a negative thing, you want to ignore it. You want to do, cleansing, and then change the energy of your environment, not pay any attention to it whatsoever, not feed it. Because attention is a form of food for a lot of spirits. And things from fear to anger and even interest and curiosity can add to whatever it is that's going on. So always proceed with that in mind when you're trying to find out what something is. People that have a tendency to start doing a lot of, trying to get EMF, electronic, or EVF, the electronic voice phenomenon, keys, okay. I got my letters wrong. Got the sound right, though. And that kind of thing, or using Ouija boards to connect with it, often end up attracting something completely different, or it transforms into something completely different. It's not entirely sure how that happens, but I've seen it. And so if somebody is believing in, evil, demonic kind of forces, and then decides that that's what's going on, you can actually create a stronger reaction and a stronger entity by trying to battle it. So sometimes boundaries are different from just a battle, and you need to look in yourself and see what it is your own belief systems have in there, as far as Like, do you believe that this is an ultimate battle between good and evil and you have to, win? Or, I don't know, I don't have that one, so it's hard to describe, but still, um, it's a definite phenomenon I've seen happen. And sometimes not knowing what's going on is not a bad thing. So Lisa says, hi, Siofra. Hi, everyone. Hi. Nice to see you. Yeah, so whenever we're opening ourselves up to connect with things that are not solid, because solid things are defined, you know where their edges are, and you can experiment on them and figure out what their properties are, what they do, and so forth. But when we get into the field of something like a spirit being, a goddess, a energy that's floating around, then our ability to transform it into something else comes into play, because it's not solid. So it can be affected by our feelings, our thoughts, our energy, our expectations, our fears and anxieties, and all those other things that can come into play. So Jonathan, hi Jonathan, says, okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, Siofra asked us very nicely last week to keep her on her toes. To get the trickier questions out faster. Do you want our high priestess to become bored? Well, I don't think I'm at any risk of becoming bored, but thank you for worrying about me. Desideradum says, haven't seen any movies about the Fae, but reading stories of humans interacting with Fae folk who make themselves look human, then reveal another form. Bait and switch, I guess. Yeah. Or Lena says, finally caught alive. Hope you're well today. Yes, I am. Thank you very much. Jonathan says, with us, bored with us, where is your fire for wisdom? Do you not understand what a privilege we have fallen into? Well, thank you very much. And thank you, Ian. I'll start. I have a friend who is a literal spider. I feed her moths. How does this get with your perspective that life is sacred? Well, I mean, some people interact really well with spiders, and spiders are good insects. And I might kill a spider if it jumps on me. All bets are off because of boundary issues, but I don't go out of my way to try and kill them. And in fact, people who end up doing like the pesticide kind of thing in their homes to kill spiders often leave room for the more dangerous kind of spiders to breed. Like in our area, we have the family member, the brown recluse, what's the other name they have for them here? But it's a type of brown recluse spider that's quite poisonous. So it's like anything else, things live, things die. And if you have a friendship with a spider, I think that's awesome. So, or your friend has a friendship with a spider. And Desideradum says, Welsh Fae are particularly notorious for shape shifting. Well, any spirit can shift its shape, so I'm not sure that it's just a quality of the Fae. I mean, they're not solid, so they're not like bound by certain things. The writer says, Jonathan, I have a spider around here too. I call it Napoleon. And add, seriously, I spent an evening talking to it. It seemed to appreciate the vibrations. Well, there are certainly plenty of goddesses that are associated with the spider in Greek mythology, like Ariadne and so forth, and the idea of weaving the web and making their web is so strong. Spider silk is like the strongest substance on the planet by weight, tensile strength, and they're trying to figure out how to get more of it by genetically modifying some goats to make spider silk in their milk. Nothing dangerous there. What could go wrong? But I mean, when it comes to your personal relationship with life, it's like, as a gardener, I pull certain plants in order to make room for other plants that I consider more beneficial. I leave plants that other people think are not beneficial because I'm leaving them for the bees, and and also for potential herbal supplements later, like dandelion roots and that kind of stuff, so that there's medicine that's out there. It's all a matter of where you live and what's going on in your area and how you feel about it, and everyone's going to be slightly different when it comes to that. Emily says, when we got bored working in a call center, we befriended the 2 spiders in the window. My supervisor named them, and we tracked their progress across the large window. They're fast at making webs, too. We had one on our car that kept making a web overnight, like between the window and the side mirror. Just not that great a place for catching bugs because, the wind kind of ruins the web, but hey, they're very fast. So Jaleesa says, okay, so hope this isn't too much of a taboo topic, but I'm curious to know your thoughts on psychedelics and those who have used them for spiritual purposes, enlightenment. Okay, we've talked about this a few times here and there, and it depends upon you as an individual. I can't use them because I'm already too far out as far as like being able to see things and so forth, so it doesn't add, it detracts. And I personally don't like the idea of not being able to be in control of my mental state, because if you're on any kind of a drug, regardless of what it is, you are sort of stuck with the bodily reaction that it induces until that reaction is finished. So it's not like you can do it and decide, well, this is a bad idea, and then you can stop. It's like you're stuck. So before doing anything like that, you need to know yourself and need to know what it's likely to do and whether it's actually going to be helpful or harmful. I talk about the harmful effect that I had in that shamanic dismemberment video that I did. So if you want to know more about that experience of mine, I would look at that. That doesn't mean that everyone is the same as far as that goes. Back this up a little bit so I don't lose track of where I am. Okay. And certainly in like tribal cultures and so forth, they used the certain types of drugs in different parts of the world in order to break down the barriers of the mind, to let somebody have an experience and to see if they had the ability to become a medicine person in whatever that tribal culture or whatever it was is, and to help them figure out what their purpose in life is. And there's lots of things that can give you that experience besides drugs. Fasting, starvation, heat deprivation, sensory deprivation. There's lots of different ways to change your state of mind in order to open yourself up to new experiences. Different kinds of meditational practices. And so the thing to look at is whether or not it's a crutch. And if you can't do it without it, then you're not gaining ground, if you know what I mean. It's like if the point of doing it is to break through a barrier of not letting yourself experience something, and then after that barrier is broken down, then you can let that happen without it. If it's like it becomes a crutch and it's like without it, it doesn't work. So always look at those different pieces as far as that goes, because everyone's going to have to figure that out for themselves. And certainly, since we are all so different, our bodies are different, our body chemistry is different, our brain chemistry is different, our environments are different. So this is, there's no one size fits all when it comes to that. Certainly there are plenty of legal drugs out there that are dangerous, as well as illegal ones that aren't as dangerous as they are purported to be. So use some common sense and figure that out. For me personally, I'm not supposed to do that. I also can't be involved in anything with blood sacrifice, even though it is a road to opening up a pathway to the other side. And I know that from personal experience because I was sort of inside of a cow when they shot the cow, and I got pulled out of onto the other side with the death of the cow. It's sort of its spirit moving from our plane to its other side pulled me with it. And so I know that that can be a method for opening up that pathway. But I have some past lives that make that not okay for me to do in this one. So then, so there's always those sorts of things. So it's not like a value judgment on people who do participate in that, as long as they're treating their animals humanely and they're eating them afterwards. There's certainly a lot of different magical traditions where animal sacrifice is actually still something that's being done, and historically it's been done a lot. And I think that's the reason why, from my personal experience. So, let's see. Canary says hi. Everyone says hi to Canary. Is there a spiel to make sure I always get the notification? I don't know. I'm not on that end of things. Some people apparently get them and some people don't. Gnomes is here, says the city has rules of lawn length and they had flowers mowed. They were pretty much purple flowers I wanted left for the Fae folk, and I felt more than once it was a gift from the Wee folk to me. Yeah, sometimes you have to deal with society and its decisions that may not be based on anything that you're, comfortable with. It's annoying. Ryder says, I didn't get notified today either, or last week. Okay. Thank you for your help, Siofra. You're welcome, Jaleesa. Canary says, at Ryder, it's a problem. I've noticed that it's been happening a lot, especially with people in the more magical community. So perhaps there is some kind of I know that's happened on different groups, like Facebook groups and that kind of thing, where people who are in a place where they can decide these things can block stuff because they have their own personal prejudices that they're dealing with. Amanda says, hi, I'm new here. I see spiders in my half waking, half sleep state. They're many different sizes. So let's see. Spiders often relate to the darker goddesses, or Ariadne is one of the Greek figures that has to do with spiders. I think the Morgan might have spiders hanging around, but I'm not as familiar with all of the different spider deities that might be out there. So you might want to investigate some and see. The Gnomes is here, says, what is it called when you go into trance and see visions that you find the meaning of, or that happened later, or in this state talk to spirit beings in another language? Channeling, trance state, clairvoyance, and clairaudience, and probably some clairsentience at play when that happens. Time is not solid and not straight. And we often forget that, because in our experience here in physical form, it appears as if time starts when you're born and progresses until you die. And it's a straight line that goes from 1 second to the next second to the next second to the next second and accumulates. But in reality, time is sort of all at once, and we're just experiencing it, most of us, in a line, in a direct line. So when you're in a certain state and you're sort of mentally disconnected from your physical form, in a meditative state, a trance state, a dream state, you're freer to sort of fall along the stream of time and land in different places. That's why some people remember past lives, or they see a future event, premonition of something that's going to happen. Deja vu, I think, is one of those signs that you've looked ahead, when something keeps on giving you that feeling over and over again. When I have that happen a lot, I'm pretty confident that I've been checking out like the future time stream to see what's going on. So it's a combination of things. It's not just one specific thing. And talking to beings in another language, I hear their thoughts or see their thoughts, and I feel their feelings. So I interpret things in English because that's this language that I'm in, but I don't know that it is actually language at all. So I don't know. There are some people who apparently can remember languages from other lifetimes, and you might be having something like that happen, where you're in a state where you're connecting with a past life, where you're speaking a different language and you understand it. I don't know. So that's what I have to say on that, I guess, for now. Dora Mifra says, all very interesting, thank you. Was wondering if you know anything in regards of celestial dragons. Well, I just watched a funny movie about a dragon that had Jackie Chan in it that was entertaining. But dragons are a spirit being that are out there, and I've seen a few. I don't know about celestial ones, though. I've only seen air dragon up in the jet stream, a river dragon in the river. I met that two-headed dragon thing, which is like an ancient being in the woods. Its heads are at either end because it's a spirit. It doesn't have to actually look like it would function in real life. So there are some people that get seriously into it. I've ridden on dragons in different guided meditations or whatever. I had this really nice green dragon that I took a fly to the moon on. That was fun. Spirit beings can look like a lot of things, and I saw one in the Aurora Borealis once, which was pretty amazing actually, because it was very large. And it stayed still. I mean, that was what was interesting about that experience. It was like, usually the aurora moves. It's always moving. It doesn't stop and stay in one shape. And there was this part of the aurora that was not doing that. And I started to notice it, and there'd be like a flash would come up, and I would see one side of it, and then that would go away, and then I would see another side of it, and went back and forth like this until I took note, and I looked at it, and I realized that this part was the flame coming out of the other part, which was a dragon, his whole body. So that was kind of interesting to see, and maybe that would be a celestial dragon, because the northern lights are created, of course, by solar wind coming from the sun, so it'd be outside of the earth, kind of thing. I don't know. All right. Writer says that at Canary, what problem were you noticing? How did you learn about your past lives? Marisol says, I was born remembering 2 of them when I was little, and then other memories came back as I got older. I did some past life regressions at one point, some of them because I wanted to understand what was going on in this life with a relationship, like with my son, for example. Partly because David, who was my partner at the time during the Moida channelings, was interested in learning more about that and liked to do them. And he liked me as a subject because I was malleable, I suppose. I had some pretty interesting memories that way. Sometimes they came to me in dreams. And then one day, I was just talking about this the other day, as a matter of fact. I had a dream experience, which didn't seem to be a dream, where I remembered before I was born in this life, and I was a ball of light, and there was another ball of light that was bigger, and I was kind of like in orbit around with this other ball of light, and it was talking to me, and it said, you will now forget everything you know until the time comes for you to remember. And I woke up from that and was very excited that I had remembered that I was going to forget. So I thought that was a positive sign. So yeah, it's just sort of always who I've been. And one of the lives I remembered was being burned at the stake as a witch, which wasn't very fun. And I have issues with fire in the beginning because of that. And yeah, and there's more people being born remembering past lives. It seems to be more common in children to remember them, and then as they get older they fade and they don't remember them as clearly. But yeah, they've had a number of pretty verifiable cases of people remembering a life that they'd had. So it's good not to remember them unless it's time to remember them, because really you're bringing all that emotion and all the things that happened to you forward in time, and most of them weren't fun, I can tell you. Um, yeah, most of them aren't all that much fun to remember, so if you have a lot of stuff you're dealing with, you probably don't want to remember them anyway. Let's see. So Desideratum says that writer that Neil Gaiman wrote a book called Anansi Boys. It's a great story. Okay, so that's about the spider's name. Writer says, no worries, Canary, I get it now. Okay. Marisol says, also, I had a dream about a leprechaun, but they seemed mad at me. What could that mean? Stay away from leprechauns. Jonathan says, how the hell were you in a cow? Okay, so I was living in the Kispiox Valley, and my neighbor's cow, was like a family cow, got into her house right after she bought a large bag of grain, like a 40-pound bag of grain. And the cow ate the entire bag of grain, which is very bad. This is not good for cows to have that much grain. It sort of turns to an acid in their stomach and then starts to burn holes in their stomach, and it's like really bad. I was there, I'd already been there as a healer for a couple of years. This was towards the end of the time that I lived in the Kispiox. And she came over to my house and asked me if I would come to her house to see if I could do a healing on her cow, because she didn't want to put it down. So I'd never worked on anything that large before as a psychic healer, and so I went to her house and I held the cow's head in my lap, which is sort of a strange thing because they're very big, and I'd never, like I said, worked on anything that large. And while I held the cow, it eased its pain, but I knew as soon as I touched it that it was going to die and there wasn't anything I could do about it, because I saw Hathor. I had a vision of Hathor when I connected with the cow. So energetically, I connected with the cow's energy, because that's what I always do when I do energy healing or psychic healing, is connect with the energy field of the individual, in most cases, that I'm working on, and then feel which way the energy is going, where it's blocked, and that kind of thing. And so when I saw the vision of Hathor, I knew that she was there to take the cow back, and so that the cow was going to die, but I didn't know how to tell my friend, and so I did what I could. And like I said, while I worked on the cow and gave it energy, it was in less pain. But at some point, I had to go back to my house, which was about a mile away, because she was right across the road from me, and my driveway was a mile long. So basically just a little bit more than a mile. And I told her I needed to go back to my house, but I would keep on sending the cow energy, because you don't have to be there necessarily in person to give energy to anything. And so I went back to my house, and I sat down in I think I was in the kitchen, but I was meditating and focusing and still sort of being with the cow, sending it energy, and when they shot it. So I heard the shot, but I knew what happened before I even heard the shot. And when that happened, I was pulled up onto the other side, and I saw what I described later as the great cowness. Like there was just, and the cow's life passed before its eyes, which I thought was very odd, but it did. It was like everything it had done in its life, and then what killed it. And then I rose up with it, and at a certain point, I disconnected and came back to my body. And so that gave me the theory from that experience that that's where instinct comes from, that animals gain that experience, that each time something goes wrong and it doesn't work out for them, they add that collective memory to that ness, which I don't know what to call. And when enough of them have a similar experience, then they all know that's not something to do because that'll cause problems for them. So I think that instinct comes from the top down sort of thing that way. So that's what happened, and it was unexpected. And yeah, I never even imagined that such a thing could happen to anybody. And that's how a lot of the stuff I've learned has happened. I've fallen into it just randomly. So Ryder says, oh, they're talking about the Anansi is an Akan folktale character. Oh, he's a character in a book. Okay, he often takes the shape of a spider and is sometimes considered to be a god of all knowledge of stories. Okay, at Raider, not getting the notification. I understand now. Okay, so you guys are figuring that out. Yay! Oh, Jacqueline has sent me a super chat. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. I really appreciate that. Desideradum says, Siofra, how do you protect your home from overly negative neighbors? By the way, they've just discovered aurora hurricanes. Yeah, I saw that. They rain electrons. I'm like, we now have hurricanes in space. I was like, whoa, all right. Well, there's only so much you can do to protect yourself from negative neighbors. I mean, I've got things all around my property. I've got stones buried in different places. I've got the globes that I made that are in the front yard. I try to keep my energy as positive as possible, and that's about all you can do. I mean, because people will move in and you don't have necessarily much control over that. So far, things are okay. And thank you again, Jacqueline. And I'm doing pretty good. So, Canary says, I remember a past life where fires drown me as... Okay, when people drown me as a witch, and I have a fear when I'm near open water at times, and when I was little, and even though at times I had horrible fear just being near the water. Yes. My daughter had a fear of water, and I remembered a life where she jumped off a cliff and drowned in the ocean because she couldn't be with a guy. And I was her mother, so yeah, we had a few issues around that. So certainly, fear of things can be part of what goes on there. Marisol says, thanks you, that's great advice. Ryder says, I have very negative neighbors too. I'm willing and open to new suggestions too. Well, I mean, if they're like dangerous or so to you. I mean, when my daughter had a neighbor who was like had a gun and was like paranoid and was hallucinating and was right across the street and was like threatening, my grandkids, we did a protective thing for her, and it was pretty basic. I mean, we put up a picture of Medusa. I printed up on her front door facing outward, so the energy of the symbol or the image would be facing away from the house. I did a very basic salt and pepper concoction, equal salt, equal pepper, or whatever, and did a boundary spell, like a psychic boundary wall or what have you, across the front of her house and her neighbor's house, because her former in-laws were next door, so we did all the houses. And the very next day, he built an 8-foot tall fence, and then within the month, he moved out. We weren't trying to make him leave, but it seemed we needed to do something to protect the neighborhood, and that's what the result was. So sometimes when you do things, you don't know for sure exactly what's going to happen because of it. So that's why it's always a good idea to try and think it through as well as you can, because there are always surprises. Ryder says, I just keep cleansing myself and home and doing positive meditations. I don't want to do magic on them as I don't want to interfere with another's will, so just working on myself. Yeah, and I get that. That's one of the reasons why we went for just strictly protective, kind of keep them from getting to her house with the gun, and so forth. So, and I agree, I didn't want to force him to move because then he'd just be someone else's problems. I didn't feel that that would be ethical for me to do that, and because then I'm just moving the problem from one place to another. but then that ended up being the result in any case. So sometimes it's what happens. Canary says, at Ryder, throw salt onto them in a robe and say, stay away from me, and keep doing it till it works. Yeah, there is also the turkey curse from the Chaos Magic book, that you stand in a stance and throw your hands out them and yell gobble, 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 gobble 5 times. And usually they'll think you're insane and want to leave. So I've not tried it, but I'm thinking that might work too. Jacqueline says they've done a lot of studies on animal instinct learning with monkeys. Yeah, the 100th Monkey book actually is kind of interesting when it comes to that. Laura says, that's amazing, Siofra. I need to go. Love all of you. Have a great week, everyone. Bye, Laura. Canary says, at Ryder honestly works. Take care, Laura. Jacqueline says, you are welcome, Siofra. I appreciate all you do. Thank you again. Ryder at Canary, not in my case, seems to make people more angry. Jonathan says, nope, tell us how you charged your protection stones. Well, I have a very large piece of obsidian, and it sits in front of the house, and it is just tasked with taking any negative energy and draining it out. It depends on what stones I'm using. So, I mean, it's like if a stone is a computer, you're giving it the program you want it to follow, you're telling it what you want it to do, and you pick a stone that is compatible with the instructions you want it to follow. So if you want something to bring in positive energy, you're not going to pick like a piece of volcanic glass, because that's not its natural inclination, is to bring in positive stuff. Its inclination is to get rid of negative stuff. So when it comes to stones, if you pick the right one, there's not much you need to do. Jonathan says, we're running out of time. Oh, we've got a half an hour. Ryder, or Canary says, make it black ritual salt and make some kind of symbol at them after you do it, or say something in a made-up language. Salt already made up. All right. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Yep. Gnomes is here, says, thank you. I will communicate more. I also wave at the shadows now, or anything that feels positive. Yes, and just interacting with the nature that happens to be around you. Like, so Jonathan's friend is feeding spiders, and some other people are feeding spiders. I'm feeding the crows, and we're feeding the local birds. And, we have the flowers in the garden for the hummingbirds and for the bees and that kind of thing. So, it's like wherever you happen to live, whatever the environment is, the point is to figure out how best to be a part of the process of what's going on. And you can't do everything, so you pick what you can do. I mean, it doesn't serve anybody to feel guilty about not being able to, save the entire planet, because that's something all of us need to do together as a whole. No one person can do that. So what you want to do is to, do as much as you can for your part, and hopefully assume everyone else is doing the same. I mean, what else can we do with that? It's one of those things. But, yeah, I mean, being born the way I was, I haven't had a choice to decide I want to follow this path or not, because I was sort of on it when I walked in the door, and I had to figure out how to work with it, survive it, do what I could to maneuver myself through it, learn from it, and hopefully share some of what I've encountered and learned as I go along that might help someone else. I mean, you never know, a small seed of information that you get now could 10 years from now suddenly pop up in your head in the middle of some kind of a spirit crisis, and you'll go like, oh yeah, this is what I should do, and then bam, you just do it, because someone introduced you to the notion. You never know. So hopefully that's sort of the idea of planting seeds and letting them do their thing. Ryder says that Jonathan, I would ask about transfiguration, but Siofra touched on it already at the beginning. Yeah, transfiguration, well, we didn't quite cover the entire subject because overshadowing is part of what I wanted to talk about as well in a different sense. And that would be what happens when you're connecting to a specific spirit being, a god or a goddess or a being of some kind. And because of that connection, opening that you have with them, part of what they are sort of shows through you. So, yeah, that would be often what happened when I was doing the Moida sessions, because sometimes it would be her, sometimes it would be past me's, sometimes it would be other people that people were seeing, and it would just sort of all come off.
Pretty overwhelming.
You mean when you actually become possessed by a god? Yes, that is definitely a whole different ballgame. Yes, having that happen and being ridden by a god in a bimbe was quite
major overshadowing.
Yes, that would certainly be an overshadowing. That would be a complete, like, I didn't do it on purpose. I wasn't invoking it to get it. I was just there and became a vessel, and it filled me up and took over. Is why I don't participate in those rituals anymore. So Jason Pra says, someday I would like to live a more natural lifestyle. Ryder says, glamour. Yes. Jonathan says, Professor Witch, what's Ian doing? He's laying on the floor right now, relaxing. Ryder says, it's one of the most fascinating things I can do. Oh, I reached the bottom. Okay. I don't know if you want to talk about what you're doing or not in particular. He does his usual meditational.
Yeah, you can generalize.
Yeah, he does his meditational practices and so forth on a regular basis, and is processing them as they come along, working on things. Mary says, hi, can you tell us a little about the goddess Ostara? She's a German goddess that has become associated with the spring equinox, which is coming for us here in the Northern Hemisphere. Our version of Easter, and he is associated with eggs and bunnies, unlike Ishtar, who is not, which keeps popping up, and Ishtar and Easter are not connected in any way whatsoever. Taylor says, I used to have sleep paralysis, but then I got used to them and excited to see them and interact. However, they stopped visiting, maybe because they can't feed off me. That's a good thought. Maybe that's the case if it was connected with that kind of a thing. If fear was what they were after, because people who have sleep paralysis, fear is often the response that they have. And if you've gotten yourself into a state where you're not afraid and you're calm, then there wouldn't be any juicy bits, if that's what they were after. Canary says, some entities that I work with do that to me sometimes, and people look at me like I've grown 2 heads, or maybe you have. They can see the extra head, right? Musing Thalia says, lovely mermaid hair today. Thank you. Yay, thank you. I like it. That's one of those things. It is sort of an aqua color because of the silver in my hair. It changes the dark forest green into this lovely aqua, which I like. Neri says, I think some of the gods we are the same god entities with different names. Thoughts? Well, certainly there were lots of different gods that migrated from one part of the world to another, and as they migrated, their names changed. Or like with Kuan Yin. Kuan Yin was originally male and became female when he arrived in Japan and took on a female aspect. And now that's the most common version of that particular god, goddess. And one of the things I like about the polytheistic type of stuff is that you can find a god or a goddess out there that resonates with where you're at, what you need, what you're doing. where you're going and how you resonate. And so it's sort of like tuning in the right frequency for whoever you happen to be. But they definitely take on different aspects. I mean, the Hindu gods are a lot more lively and active than some of the other gods out there because there's many more people that are actively working with them. And, there's that theory, of course, that we make them as well. In some cases, it seems to be the case.
There's certainly a technique for that,
right, making a house for a deity and then feeding it and making it. It's sort of an interesting thing. I remember one group I was in once where someone was really into the Game of Thrones and the Mother of Dragons and wanted her to be his personal goddess, and people were saying you can't do that because she's not really a goddess. And I'm like, well, you can, but it's going to take a lot of time and energy and effort to build her up to the level of an actual goddess who's already out there, who's like been around for a long time. So I don't understand why you would, because you can, find something close that already has that entire history, mythology matrix, built in to their energy field there.
Many of those are still being worshipped.
Right. Like when I was in Hawaii, I met Pele, and she's not a dead goddess. I mean, she is as lively as anything I've ever met. And I slept on Volcano National Park. This was before the most recent set of eruptions. This was in like 1986, I think, during the harmonic convergence. And, and she came to me in my dreams when I was sleeping on her land. And so that was a very interesting experience because around here, I've met one actual goddess form that's local, and it's like a spring goddess energy. She has a lot of flowers. When I see her, she, flowers form at her feet as she walks. So there's that spring life form kind of stuff, and she seems to be a local form. But I don't know for sure where she came from, and so. There's a lot of that kind of stuff around here. Writer says, you know what they say, two heads are better than one. That's what they say, but sometimes they just argue with each other. It really depends. Excellent Canary, these deities are universal. Yes. Marisol says, what did Pele look like? Well, I remember the fire in her feet. I don't know how to describe it. Her hair was fire. When she walked, there was fire. She was very fiery. There was definitely a lot of fire. And it's just the presence kind of thing. And the attitude the people in Hawaii have about it and her land is different. So, they believe wholeheartedly that they're borrowing the land that she has created, and at some point she can just come and take it back. And when it happens, it's an attitude that, well, she wanted it back, and that's just the way it is. Very different from how we here on the mainland tend to look at stuff like that. Like, what do you mean? It's mine. It's not yours. So that was interesting to do. So Taylor says, oh, one sleep paralysis thing I saw was a short four-armed being. Does that ring any bells? Well, there's any number of gods that have more than one set of arms, but no particular bells. I'll give that some thought.
Hindu ones often have like 6 faces too.
Well, right, they can have lots of different faces. The Hindu deities, multiple arms, multiple faces, all sorts of things. But usually they're not in your kitchen, wandering around in your house. So Emily says, Pele was my first goddess connection when I was 8 and went to Hawaii. I still consider her close for personal guidance. Yeah, she's pretty interesting. I rather enjoyed her, and she helped me transform my life. And it was definitely, it was actually because of her that Ian and I met, I think. And I cleared out a bunch of stuff that needed to be transformed pretty seriously from then on, because that was in 1986. I did a 4-year kind of thing with her, and and that ended in 1990, and then Ian and I met in 1991. So there definitely seems to be a correlation there. Sometimes it's not pleasant. It was not pleasant to go through, but it was important. So Amy on the porch in the garden says, any tips on maintaining protective boundaries and grounding when nearly all energy is focused on healing and recovery, finding it difficult to maintain focus and stamina? Well, that's one of the reasons for putting up things that will automatically do their job, like with the right kind of stones, like using obsidian or what's the my words, smoky quartz would be another one that you can bury on the property, and use that as protective stuff. Make things that you like I did the cross brooms, and I have them in my kitchen. I haven't quite finished it yet, so I haven't put a picture up on it, but I've got some bells hanging from it. I've got some stone little jars that I found that I put stone chips in. I've got like five different stones that are hanging up there. When you put things together, plant something in your yard that's naturally protective, like rosemary is a good plant to have near the front of your property, near the edge of the property. It'll naturally protect the property from anything getting in that's negative. And you can plant lavender to attract positive energy in. So, there's ways that you can just arrange your household and without having to do specific things all the time, which is what I'm hearing, is that, you have an issue with energy.
Of course, if you ground something out into a talisman or something also, specifically with the idea that it's self-recharging and you have to mess with it.
Right, anything that you make, you can do that with, where you can make it, give it the instruction that it's going to self-cleanse or self-charge or whatever. So, that's what I have done, so I have enough stuff over the years. They sort of accumulate as you go. Jonathan says, please spend an hour on Amy's question. Yeah. And it is definitely something to consider when you're going through that sort of self-healing and having trouble maintaining focus and stamina. Is like setting things out that let them do their job automatically, or they're naturally inclined to be that way. So, and with grounding, just get a piece of hematite would be a good stone to carry in your pocket if you're feeling like you need to ground, or sitting under a tree and like, doing the roots kind of thing, letting yourself connect to the earth through the tree and let exhaustion and whatnot flow out into the ground, to let go of it, and then you can change the direction of the flow and pull energy up from the earth so that you get energy from not just yourself. A lot of times people are just using energy from their own bodies and their own biosphere, instead of getting it from the source of life that's everywhere. So the more you can tune into that kind of thing, the easier it will become, and then you'll have the energy you need for the healing that you're going through right now. So, sitting outside, if you're in a place where spring is coming, finding a place on the ground outdoors and just to be in the air, letting that energize you and heal you and cleanse you and that kind of thing. Canary says that, Amy, I will ask guides or beings I trust to keep up protection for me. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I have some deities that assist, like the Garuda helps with protection, and both when I'm driving and in my house, when I'm sleeping and that kind of thing. So that helps quite a bit. Canary says, black tourmaline is my favorite protection grounding crystal. Yeah, I love the black tourmaline. That stuff, it also automatically repels negative spirits or negative energy. Thank you so much for doing this live chat, this is Rodham says. You're welcome. Gnomes is here, says, I've been up since 1 p.m. Saturday. It's 5 p.m. now. Also, I have been putting a black salt circle around my bed purely to keep myself feeling more secure. A dream catcher above my window barriers for sleep. I didn't know you could use talismans like that, Jason Frost says. Yes. You can use talismans for all kinds of things.
Tiger eye for self-protection.
Right. Yeah. I have certain stones that I use, like I have this tiger eye that kind of I just wear naturally all the time, and it helps to protect my energy and keep my boundaries going. That kind of thing. So that's another thing you can do is use things that you wear as on a regular basis, and then just have them, programmed for doing that kind of a job. Amy on the porch and garden says, "Thank you, Siofra, and everyone. You're welcome." Gnomes is here, says, "I'm going to watch until the end before I sleep." Well, you can watch it after it's over too. Jonathan retracted a message. Ryder says, "Especially if you are going through the dark night of the soul, it's exhausting, and every little bit of protection and help is such a gift." Yes, when you're going through that kind of a thing, it's good. Marinda says, "Hello." Hi, Marinda. Gnomes is here, says, "Thank you so much for teaching me also wearing clear tanzanite self-cleansing." I haven't figured out what's going on with me and tanzanite yet, so I still haven't found that piece that I bought that made my blood pressure plummet. So I haven't been able to confirm whether that's good for me or not, but yeah, everyone's going to have different reactions to different stones. Taylor W says, "Just curious, sorry if I'm rude, but how does your partner identify spiritually?" So how would you answer that question?
How do I identify spiritually?
Yeah.
As part of the universe, honestly, and not any specific thing. I accept all the things which seem in conformance with my desire to become enlightened or illuminated, and try to follow them, but I don't restrict myself to any one method or means.
Sounds like a good explanation to me. Jonathan says, "Thanks, Siofra. It's almost the witching hour in Africa." Oh, yes. And you're in the south of Africa, so does that mean that you have the fall equinox coming? Gnomes is here, says, "Do you know if a silver ring with lapis lazuli has any properties? I wear it even in my sleep." Well, lapis is a very good stone for protection and for spiritual connection. It has a lot of different properties. I'd look up the lapis, but you can charge it to do whatever you want as well. And definitely, I would say it's a good thing. I have my triquetra ring, and I wear that all the time. The only time I take it off is if I'm going into a swimming pool, because chlorine is bad for the silver. Makes it turn green or something. I don't remember. But anyway, yeah. I don't put it in high chlorine density things. And right now I'm not doing anything like that. So Jonathan says, let's see. So Jonathan says, "Fucking fantastic," being put on the spot. He liked your explanation. Can you make it a symbol of protection, the ring? I mean, yeah, because it's a ring, and you can, focus on the fact that whatever finger you're using it on, it doesn't matter which finger it is in particular, but that it is there to protect you. So it's how you use it and how you program it. Taylor says, "Thank you for your answer." Mary says, "Can you suggest a housewarming gift for a friend following this path?" Ooh. Well, gee, I don't know. There's just all sorts of good things you can give to a witch. A pretty rock, a nice shell, a nice plant if she has a garden, some rosemary, some rue, which is hard to come by. I haven't been able to find rue. Depends on where you live. If you know she likes something in particular, some kind of a shape like butterflies or dragonflies or angels or something like that, you can give her a little statue. If she has a garden, a little garden statue. I don't know. I mean, we just like all kinds of things. Is smoky quartz man-made? No, it is not. It is a natural stone. I don't know if they make smoky quartz as well, and it can be man-made, but smoky quartz is actually a type of quartz, just like amethyst. It comes in that form. and it can be darker or less dark depending. Marinda says, have you heard of Mujibaba? I was just wondering, I found his talks recently, learning how to be one with the isness, as he calls it. It has been helping my magic work. Mujibaba? That's a no from both of us. We haven't heard of him. Jonathan says, my birthday is the 20th of March, equinox, baby, but is it fall or spring? Canary says that Marinda, what is the isness? I've never heard of it before. I think that's just being in your life and being with life itself. Ryder says that Jonathan, how old are you, if you don't mind me asking? Taylor says, can you charge other things besides rocks? I've personally been interested with bones and dead bugs. Well, you can certainly make a talisman out of anything. Yeah. And depending on what culture you're in and what the bugs are and stuff like that, they're going to have different properties just like crystals have. So know your stuff and see what the associations are. So at least pick ones for the purpose that have some connection. So Jonathan says he's turning 32. Fall. Aha. That's what I thought, but I wanted to check. I thought you were below the equator. Whoops. Come back here. All right, so we're coming up on 10 minutes left. I don't know what we want to talk about for the last 10 minutes. Any questions on the error that we did? The error video? It was kind of fun. I was definitely being an airhead during it. Miranda says, the being in awareness, I take it as the feeling kind of reminds me of what Siofra calls being clear. So that's the inness.
Yeah, it's kind of if you can manage that complete internal silence to where you start merging with everything.
Right. Internal silence is something else. Jonathan says, but we don't call it fall, we call it autumn. Okay, that works. Autumn equinox works for me too. Miranda says, thanks, I'll have a look at that person. Yes, air is my element, Jason process. Trader says, was interesting to learn about the sylphs. Yeah, they are interesting. And I was experimenting actually last night when I was going to bed with the hand and the energy, air in the hand. And I'm really starting to see a lot of stuff. And boy, is my core aura green is of such like an emerald green color. It's amazing, actually, when you can see the colors. But I was having fun with that, and before I went to sleep last night. So, Gnomes is here, says, I'm a fire sign. Could I use elements to make my ring a protective thing, and how? Well, it doesn't matter what sign you are. You can use anything, and you can use all of the elements. So, we'll have to get back to that one, I guess, on another
Yeah, well, things like that hematite ring we bought for me that one time for...
Yeah, the hematite. I can't wear the hematite ring. It always breaks on me.
Breaks too easily.
Yeah, it kind of shatters. So how could you use a fire element to make a ring a protective thing? Just charge it up with fire energy, but... Well,
yeah, I'd recommend something that has a fiery nature, so it could be...
Like agate, fire agate,
or it could even be like a wooden ring made of like oak or something that has associations of fire.
Right.
That kind of
I think
thing.
What he has, though, is a silver ring with lapis. Or maybe that's someone else who has that ring, so never mind.
Okay.
I get confused.
Because the silver is generally watery.
Right. We'll have to give that some thought. So Violet says, hi Siofra, I was moving my boxes in circles and I missed this one. God, I was going to set my alarm too. Well, hi. I'm sorry you missed it, and I don't know why. Apparently you're not the only one who's having trouble getting notifications. Miranda says, recently I've been working with Giha, the Iroquois god of wind. The air video is right on point. Well, yeah, I guess that would be a god of the wind. And I work with Aurora, who is the mother of the winds. So, she's like my patron goddess or whatever they call it. She's been around me for a long time. I was going to bring her statue in and show you guys. I'll do that another time. How good are you and Ian with air? Well, me, I'm naturally airy, so,
I could use some.
Yeah, Ian says he could use some improvement in the air end of thing. But I don't usually go up and call up a wind. I have to be careful with air going by my ear. My ears are very sensitive to too much air, and I'll get an ear infection. So if I'm in the wind, I have to cover my ears. But I don't think that has anything to do with working with the elements so much. It's just my physical body. Yeah, you got to deal with whatever you've got and figure out what works and what doesn't work for you. Mary says that the air video made me wonder about the age of Aquarius. Do you think we're in the age of Aquarius yet? I'm feeling more air energy lately. Well, it would be nice, wouldn't it? But, we are coming into the age of Aquarius, but who knows what that's going to manifest like.
I think it's just really slowly.
I think it's a lot slower than we would like it to be. She said even experiencing things like your show on the computer seems airy and like Aquarius.
Kind of isn't.
It is, because we're talking, it's communication, it's ideas and so forth that we're sharing through this medium, so it would be in the air realm for sure. Miranda says, I thought we went into the age of Aquarius around 2012. Well, maybe we went into the shadow becoming Aquarius. Who knows how that works? I'm not an astrologer.
About 1968.
Yes, the song came out a long time ago. 6 minutes left, he says. Jonathan's telling everybody. Desideраtum says, the spell to bring inspiration from the air video is incredibly helpful to me. I appreciate that. Came at just the right time. Oh, I love that. I like it when synchronicities pile up. Because that's what we hope for. Let's see. Canary says at Miranda, I can't work out what's going on with the Age of Aquarius thing. Isha says, glad to catch the end of this live. Hope you guys are feeling well. Yes. And Jason says, Aurora, I'm going to look her up. Yeah, she's a goddess of the dawn. I guess that's the Roman name for her. The Greek name is Eos, I think. Or is it just dawn? Might be dawn. I don't remember. But I like the Aurora sound better, so I picked that one as far as the name went. Marisol says, I loved your air video. It was so interesting. I love air signs and air energy too. I love birds. Jonathan said, excellent answer. Writer says, I thought the age of Aqua was in the 60s. They had a song. Yeah, we were just talking about that. Yes. They did have a song about it. It's supposed to last for, is it 2,000 years, I think, each age? Because we just came out of the age of Pisces, and I think that's what it is. It's supposed to be like every 2,000 years we go into a different sign. So that means the next one will be Capricorn. I only have 2,000 years to go before my sign will be the one. So Miranda says, so I've been trying to be more social, and I'm realizing that sometimes I'm too far out for people. How do you do more witch friends? Well, I tell you, it's hard to find good people that you can connect with no matter what path you're on, I'm assuming. We were talking about this the other day. Ian and I have terrified entire restaurants full of people just because of how we talk to each other. The things that we tend to talk about are not the normal topics of conversation that you overhear in a restaurant as a whole. So, yeah, it's difficult. It's the way it is. If I unfocus my eyes, I can see a face behind you. Well, yeah, who knows? There could be several faces back there.
The shadows are a little weird because of the way the lighting is.
Yeah, the lighting makes some interesting shapes, and the brain wants to make faces out of everything. I hate that on tile in the bathroom. You look and go like, whoa, who's that facing me? Well, I don't know if I like that person staring back, or like a smudge on the wall of dirt that turns into a face. It just gets very strange. Anyway, all right, so we're coming up on our hour-and-a-half mark, and I guess I have to get going. So thank you all for participating and for helping to keep me entertained. And
Bye, all.
Ian says bye. Love you guys. Send me emails if you want to get your thingies on. So